Hey friends, in the last video we learned about how to update and delete values from the database using Ktor. In this video we will start creating a full-fledged REST API and perform all the CRUD operations and structure the app a little bit more in a clean way so it's more understandable. And as we move forward we will learn more and more about how to structure the apps depending on how complex your application is. So I will demonstrate what I'm gonna create in this next few episodes. So let's start. So we will be creating 5 endpoints and we will be using most of the HTTP methods here: get, post, put, and delete. So the first endpoint will be to get all the nodes from the database. So this will be the endpoint here, and when we make a request you can see that we will get a list of all the nodes with their IDs and the node title. And the next endpoint is if we want to just get one single node. So instead of one, I will get the node with the ID 2 and we will send the request, and now you can see that we will get the node with the ID 2. And if we enter an ID that doesn't exist, it should give us 404. So you can see that it gives us a response, but the status code is 404. And the third point, endpoint, will be to create a node. So what this endpoint will require us to do is to send a body to our Ktor server. So again, I have already set up the request, and the body will just be the node and a string that you want the node to be. And when we make a request, you can see that we will get a message with value successfully inserted and success true, and the status is 200 OK. So when we go back to the get nodes API and make a request, you can see that this new one has been added at the end with ID 8, and we can fetch just this one here as well. And the fourth endpoint will be to update a node. So here what we can do is we can update this node that we just created, and we will see so cool API and make a request. So now it is not returning anything because update just updates in the database 204. Any 200 code means that the request has been successful. So let's again make the get nodes request. So you can see that it is updated here. And if we try to update a node that doesn't exist, it should again give us 400 bad request or a 404 depending on what happens in the database. And at the end we will make a endpoint that will delete a node from the database. So let's delete the node that we just created, and we will send a request. It says 204 no content, and now you will see when I make a request, the node with the ID 8 has been deleted. So let's delete another one. Let's delete the node with the ID 2. I hate washing clothes, so let's delete that one. So let's enter the ID 2, click send. Now make a request. You see that the node with the ID 2 has been deleted. So these are the 5 endpoints that we will be creating. So let's get started. So the first thing that we will do is we will structure our app a little bit. So this project has the database connection object already and the node entity that you have seen in the previous videos. And if you want to download the starter code for this REST API, I will paste the GitHub link below. So please download it from the main branch, and the final code for each video will be in the branch named same as the video title. So let's get started. In the application.kt, we have the database object already set up. So what we will do is we will structure the app here a little bit. So we will create a new package, call it db, and here we will create another Kotlin file called database connection. And then here what we will do is we'll create an Kotlin object, name it database connection, and cut and paste all of this into that object, Kotlin object. So the next thing that we will do is we will create another package which we will name as routing, and here we will create our first routes class or a routes file where we will create all the routes for our nodes API. So the first we will create a simple Kotlin file and name it nodes router, and this will be again an extension to the application class. So it will be application dot nodes routes, and we will import application from Ktor. So if you don't know what I'm doing, please go back and watch the routing videos. I have already explained these things in those videos. And we will create our first endpoint. So the first endpoint here will be to fetch all the nodes, right? So we will create our first route. So we'll start with routing and then create our first get endpoint, which will be slash posts. And here what we will do is we will just say call dot respond text returning all the nodes. So we have created this endpoint and we will test this endpoint first. So let's run this application. Oh, sorry. So before running this application, we have to configure this route as well. So to configure this, we will go into our routing.kt and basically here we will just call our function nodes routes. So let's run it again. And now let's go back to Postman and then let's run this endpoint. So it says 404 not found. Oh, sorry. So this should be nodes, not posts. We'll go back. We will rerun it. And go back to Postman and call it. And it says returning all the nodes. So then let's go back to our nodes router. And what we will do here is in the top of this function, basically we will create a database object called db and use that database connection dot database. So because we will be using this quite often in all the endpoints, so we have just created a variable that we will refer to at different points of time in different routes here. So what we will do is we will get all the nodes. So sorry, we will do just db dot from, and it will be nodes entity, and we will select all the nodes. So last time you remember that we have to iterate through the nodes and then print it. So for this case, what we will do is we will create a nodes model here, which will represent our nodes entity, but it won't deal with the database operations. So for that, we will create a model folder as well and create a Kotlin data class called node. So it will have again the same two properties. So as our entity. So it is int varchar, and here it is an int and a string. So in our nodes router, what we will do is we will select it and then map it to our nodes model here. So first we will get the ID, and then we'll get the node, and then we will convert it to the node model that we have created. So ID or node. But so as these are optional, so by default we will point it to -1 or an empty string, and then we will return this nodes model. But before we do that, if you remember, we have to serialize our model that we want to return in from our endpoints. So what we have to do here is we have to go into our nodes model and do the serializable. And to do that, remember that in our build.gradle we have to add the serialization, Ktor serialization, and add it as the plugin as well. So you have all these things added in your startup project. You don't need to add it. I'm just letting you know so you remember when you create your own projects. So let's go back to nodes router. And last thing I think that we have to do is we have to configure the content negotiation plugin. So now the features are called plugins in new Ktor features in new Ktor version. So let's do content negotiation and JSON. So now I'll go through the steps again. We have created the endpoint and we got all the nodes. We converted the nodes into the node model. We made this nodes model serializable, and then we installed the content negotiation feature or plugin, and then told it that it will be JSON. So let's try running this endpoint and see if everything works fine. So let's go to our Postman and let's call this. So now you can see that we are getting all the nodes from the database. So I think I went a little fast in this video, but these steps are all the steps that we have done before. The only new step that we did was we called the map function, which will translate this nodes a row of nodes entity into node, so we can return a simple model to the client that is calling this API. So that's it for this video, and in the next video we will learn to do some error handling here and return some different responses according to if something goes wrong in the database. Thank you.